thought that in psych, you have funding, you fund a graduate student, and that graduate student works for you for their PhD.
Right.
And you don't switch that often. It's less common to switch. And so in our department, I was like, when I came in, really wanted to do juvenile justice work. I started working with a woman who does juvenile justice, who's really great. But her work style and my work style just didn't work. And they could have worked. It was fine. I mean, I got through a draft of a proposal for my dissertation with her. I got through my comps with her. And she pays well. Our GREs get paid phenomenally well compared to other departments and people that I know. It's not that we don't get compensated for our work. Everybody is able to live and things. It's fantastic. Not very many people take out student loans at all.
Yeah.
But she had actually an incredibly crazy work schedule. She just wouldn't need anything from you for 2 weeks, but then she would need all 60 hours at once, that kind of schedule. So that was different, and that was difficult, I think, to manage her and manage expectations. And it took a stronger personality than I had at that time, and probably still would have with her, because she's your boss. So I started with her, and John and I really liked him as a professor. I had him in my first year, and then actually a Supreme Court fellow the second year. He was downtown the whole time, had to leave. Nobody really saw him much, and so I didn't really know him. I just saw him in my first class. He impressed me as a professor. Actually, he shocked me. I thought he was incredibly boring for the first half of the class, and then he made it all make sense, and I was like, you're so smart. And he has a teaching award, so it all makes sense. But and I remember coming to him because it was the first year of the program. I started part-time. I didn't quit my job because it was a new program. I didn't know if they knew what they were doing. I'm not from Virginia, so I was like, I don't know anything about George Mason. I don't know if you guys know what you're doing, so I'll start part-time. But I remember going to him towards the end of the semester and being, I think I'm going to come full-time. What do you think? Like, is there funding? Tell me more about all the people so I could get a feel for everyone. And he was like, well, it's about time. We'll find something. We'll find funding. And Catherine and I talked, and that's who I worked with for a good long time. And I also, while I was in those years, I worked for 2 other professors, just extra hours, because they needed help on something that I had skills in. And of course, they all pay you, but still, and that wasn't hard juggling at that point, because there wasn't a lot that I had to do on my own.
Right.
I mean, I guess I probably should have worked on a publication or something. I should have been doing something, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to work on a publication if I have 2 free hours anyway,
Right.
It's not going to be like my nighttime activity every day. Let me go work on that instead of, making dinner. So then when John came back from his year in Supreme Court, I went down the federal, this is like all craziness. I went down and worked at the Federal Judicial Center with him a little bit. They needed help with some quantitative analysis, and so I was like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And so I went down there. But I was still working with faculty in our department and studying for a comp. So that was a little bit of craziness. And then him and I just started talking about this project, and we put in a grant to NSF, and that didn't get funded, but I'd already started the research. So my dissertation research is completely unrelated to grants that we actually have won since then. But
it was that first grant.
But it was the first grant that we were trying to get. And actually, in hindsight, it was for multiple years on this project, and I hate it now so much, of course, because it's my dissertation research. So thank God it's not going for more than a couple of years,
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be great. But so I don't know. So I guess it just happened to be that we connected on this one topic, and he was willing to kind of work that topic, and it's in his field. It's definitely not in Catherine's field. So she was like, "Hey, hands off." But it is interesting that I worked for her for many years, and she's not on my committee.
Wow. How was she about that switch? How were the politics behind that?
There were no politics involved in my switch, which I can't say is common, because we have had one person try to look to switch, to put feelers out to switch advisors, and didn't do it correctly. Like, they didn't tell their advisor they were putting out the feelers first, but the other people told the advisor. And so then that backfired, and there was lots of politics. So I think it just, at least in our department, where they don't really need to own you unless your skill set is so determinate on that field or on the grant that they have or something, which we do have some people who just do like GIS analysis stuff. And if those people wanted to leave after they trained them for 4 years, I can imagine that being a political mess, because you've now taught them and invested all of this skill, and you now have a grant that you need them to, there's nobody else who can you can't just walk in and pick up that skill. But mine was really okay. Catherine and I talked about it. We talked about this project. She knew that my interest was in a project on children's legal consciousness, kind of how they understand the law in their lives. And I'm interested in juvenile justice, but her data is more on, it's like census data on criminal justice facilities for kids. Facilities, probation facility, like probation services, probation offices work, the facility that the probation officers work with. It's kind of organizational a little bit. And it's also, she's very interested in health, so juvenile suicide, juvenile vaccinations when they're in custody and things. That's just not my thing. So I think Catherine actually was much more like, like, you're not going to help me.
Right.
Where she's going to be going. And I wasn't interested into it, so I think she was more like, good.
Good, yeah.
Because now you don't have to pretend that you care about hepatitis B vaccinations anymore, or chlamydia in youth. And I'm like, good, now I don't have to read about chlamydia in juvenile justice, you know? And so I think that was good. And we still, you know, she was never a real chatty, socializing kind of advisor to me. I would never call her a mentor,